Oh, welcome everybody to RadPod. We are doing a breaking news special with friend Fred P. Wellman. And because we are post midterms, we thought it was very important to bring in the big guns to have a very good and robust discussion. But before we do anything, Fred, I just wanted to tell you this is also sort of our Veterans Day special, and I wanted to personally thank you for your service to our country. I think it's very important that we acknowledge our veterans at this time, and just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to do that. As our friends know, Fred is the co-founder of the Beer Hall Super PAC, and we're going to talk about that. And you're also a Democratic political consultant, which is an incredible thing considering your journey. And Fred, go ahead and just do a brief intro to remind our friends some of your accolades, and then we're going to jump right into post midterms.
Oh, accolade yourself,
super.
Fred.
Yeah. Well,
list the CV, bro. List it.
Well, you know the deal. No, as you know, I'm a retired Army officer. I had PR for many years, left that, joined the Lincoln Project for the general election. And then afterwards, I was the executive director of the Lincoln Project before leaving last fall. I have since, as you mentioned, founded the Beer Hall Project, which is going through transition right now, which is good. I kind of put it to sleep a little while during the election because we had bigger issues to deal with. I just finished up turns as a senior advisor for Marcus Flowers in Georgia 14 and a guy named Luke Mixon in Louisiana running against John Kennedy, which unfortunately came a little short, but we fought the good fight. But so now I'm not quite unemployed, but that's politics.
Well, we are so grateful that you're here, and we're so grateful that you fight the good fight, because it really isn't about, yes, of course, we want as many wins as possible, but it's about participating actively in one's democracy. And the reason I was so keen to have you on is that, yes, we had a very big week, but I am concerned that there are many operatives selling hopium right now, like, oh, we did so great, it's all cool. And it's like, this is not the time for complacency. We are not out of the woods. And I want to remind people how important their action is moving forward. But I suppose we could talk about some of the, obviously some of the highlights, but also I think we need to have a really clear-eyed view of what's happening in this moment.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Well, obviously there's great reason for hope. We saw that the Democrats got the Senate. We may even gain in our seat. I'm confident we'll win Georgia. That's a huge win for us. President Biden came out of this with probably one of the most successful first term midterm elections since post 9/11. Before that was John Kennedy, I saw. So there's no ignoring that. We've won, essentially we've won 3 elections, if you will, for now. So, but having said that, you're right. The MAGA movement's still going. Trump's talking about announcing his re-election run tomorrow. We've got there's a very good chance that the Republicans are going to take the House by an extremely slim margin. That's going to cause a whole bunch of turmoil. A split Congress is always turmoil. But I think I do have some hope. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am slightly optimistic, which is a weird feeling for me based on what I do for a living. But I do think there's hope. There is, the voices are breaking through. Bannon did his flood the Zoe shit thing again. We saw that with I was just reading a great article from Michigan today about how all the fake polls that were coming out. It was red wave. I love the fact they believe that themselves. We always knew that wasn't necessarily going to be the case. But there's a lot of optimism. There's things to be optimistic about, that a lot of gerrymandering was overcome. But there's also the realization that the right-wing ecosystem, the disinformation networks exist. The way they created their own talking points. I was extremely angry during the election, the way mainstream media took in these talking points and used them against us. I spent the whole day stuck in our war room watching CNN, seeing, at the same time the announcers saying, oh, well, the votes aren't in yet, but boy, the Dems really screwed up. They didn't address crime. They didn't address the economy. I actually got in a little pissy match with Joe Scarborough on Twitter 2 days ago because he was saying, well, the Dems should have addressed crime. It's like, no, there was no crime, Joe. There isn't an increase in crime. There's an increase in stories about crime. Well, you don't understand New York. Okay, well, I don't give a shit about New York. I don't live in New York. When you see people coming out of exit polls or interviews, and they're doing interviews, and the guy's like, well, what do you worry? Oh, I'm worried about crime. Oh, is crime gone up here? No, but I see it's going up in the cities. I want it to come here. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It's the caravans again, right? But
Right.
it's the caravans internally. They're like, oh,
right.
the terrible crime. It's just another propaganda operation.
Media. So the media has not done. I'm disappointed with our political media again. They're not doing their part, and that's what my beef with Joe Scarborough was. It was that, but you've got a role to play. What you're saying is the Dems should have fought not just the Republican disinformation, but the media highlighting that disinformation. That's a two-piece battle. The media should be the middle, saying no, there is not a rise in crime. This is a political talking point. Instead, people like Ana Navarro, who I respect, spent all day on TV saying, well, the economy is the issue, and it wasn't. It was never the issue. So it's we have a lot of work to do. We have 2 years.
Can I point something out, Fred?
Of course.
One of the things, we are engaged right now in narrative warfare. That is what the culture war is, right?
Correct.
And so by allowing the MAGA Republicans to set the field of battle, like what is the narrative we're going to fight about?
Right.
They're already winning.
Correct. And that's exactly what Bannon does. This is the Bannon playbook, right? I mean, they're following the Bannon, flood the zone with shit. They flood the zone with fake polls. Those polls were all fake. All the Michigan polls showing that Tudor Dixon was tied, utter bullshit. I mean, there's no other nice way to say it. It was complete and utter horse shit. She was 17 points behind the whole fucking time. The idea that DeSantis is the success. I mean, and by the way, we're still seeing this bullshit, right, guys? The idea that DeSantis is somehow the hero of this election. Oh, well, DeSantis won. Jesus Christ, the guy started off in 3rd and a half base, all right? He was literally halfway to home. He has a legislature that he can walk all over. He's redistricted the shit out of the state. There's barely, all the things. He set himself up for success. There's no way DeSantis wasn't winning. Gretchen Whitmer, on the other hand, had a fight. What did she do? She swept her freaking state. And she nothing but Democrats in every office. They flipped the Senate for the first time in 20 years. Yeah, she crushed in her state, and she was up against it. So again, the media is still falling for the bullshit. Did you? I don't know. Besides fucking puff piece about Casey DeSantis on CNN. Are you kidding? Like she's the next first lady.
I saw that shit. I was like, what the hell is this?
Right.
So
we're still
bananas,
doing it. There's been no self-awareness.
Yeah. I think we know
CNN was taken over by John Malone, right? Who's a libertarian sociopath like the rest of them, and wants to both sides us into oblivion.
Hey, what other media platforms have been taken over?
I mean, at some point, the media has got to do some self-awareness and self-analysis. And to this date, here a week after the election, they haven't done it. There's been very little self-awareness. There's been a lot of excuses.
And they're not going to find it on Twitter, right?
No, well, that's
just that's. I mean,
I know what a train wreck that is. So
what I mean. In
some ways, too. By the way, that matters for our democracy too. I mean,
yes, it does.
It matters a lot.
The town hall. There's nothing else like Twitter. I mean, I don't care. Don't blow smoke up my ass about Mastodon.
Come on, get on the
Mastodon's pretty good. Come on over, bro.
I don't have a fucking computer science degree, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you
come on over. You're gonna do it eventually.
I joined. I'm on. I just don't understand a fucking thing about it. And so
me neither. So everything you're saying is amazing, and I think it's very important that no, it is. This is why I wanted you on, for exactly this kind of conversation. I think it's worth noting that I became a fangirl of yours when you did that Peter Thiel thread about let's cover democracy accurately, and you basically went on and you did a really great analysis of Peter Thiel trying to purchase democracy through his proxies in Ohio and Arizona. And I think it's kind of nice to look at it. Last time I checked, he was, 1 for 3, and probably more than that. But
he gave a little bit of money to Eric Schmidt. Obviously J.D. Vance was his biggest project.
Yes.
Eric Schmidt in Missouri got a little bit of money from him. Behind all that's a guy named Jeff Rowe that we never talk about. The Jeff Rowe is a strategist that gave us Glenn Youngkin. He's a strategist that gave us Eric Schmidt in Missouri. So Jeff Rowe is also famous. The thing about Jeff Rowe is he's famous in Missouri. He's the guy in one of his early races. He drove a Secretary of State candidate.
Did we lose you, Fred?
Hold
on.
Yeah, he's coming
back. A lot
back.
of bad people.
So repeat what you just said, the last line, because we lost you there for a moment.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we started
hotel.
with it. Jeff Rowe, famous in Missouri.
Yeah, Jeff Rowe is a political strategist who used to be here in Kansas City, is now in Texas. He was Ted Cruz's strategist. There's a famous story here in Missouri where he got involved in Missouri, started in Missouri, and the candidate he was working against, eventually they did billboards against him and all kinds of negative ads, and eventually got committed suicide. And Jeff's not embarrassed about that. He's proud of that. He's not a good dude, but he's the guy that gave us Glenn Youngkin. He's the guy that gave us this Eric Schmidt character here in Missouri. I mean, he's playing in a lot of races. He's looking for himself. He's looking to get himself a presidential candidate. Actually, and there's some bad actors on that side who aren't going away anytime soon. And of course, now we've got Trump running. You know,
Yes.
so it's we're up against it.
I'm going to volunteer to be the bad actor on our side. So if you guys want me to like throw some chaos out there, let me know.
He's just the man for the job.
Oh yeah.
So I guess one of the things that I really wanted to make sure, you have a PAC and it's named after an event where the overthrow of the government was the point, and this was in Bavaria. And there was some prison sentences, a book written, and the rest is really evil history. And I just feel like one of the beautiful things about Americans, I think, is we do have an inherent optimism that people in other countries don't have, because perhaps our history was a bit more dour than ours, right? But I do also think that if we aren't pretty steel-eyed about what is what still may happen, and this morning, of course, I woke up to another mass shooting, and it's like I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned because Jim has always said it's not what happens Tuesday, it's what happens after. And remember when Biden won in 2020 and we were all like, oh my gosh, look what we did. And then a few weeks later, Trump tried to, Trump and his allies tried to overthrow our government. So I want people to stay, I guess, in action mode, like make sure, how do we, kind of give us a bit of, history and what you'd like us to do.
The Beer Hall is also a great place to start, by the way.
Yes.
Right. The Beer Hall push is the Beer Hall push obviously is, if you know your history, 1922, I believe it's been a while. Hitler tried to do a coup in Bavaria, and he was following the footsteps of Mussolini's march to Rome. The idea was he would take over Bavaria, use the state troops there, march on Berlin. He'd be ensconced as chancellor. He failed because the Bavarian heads of government refused to participate. They snuck off, rallied the state troops and police, and stopped the Nazis as they marched on the government offices. But what the aftermath of that's really the key, right? What happened was he got a very, very light sentence. He was thrown in a luxury jail where he's allowed to have guests. He wrote Mein Kampf. He came out of the Beer Hall push not weakened, but stronger. It gave him a platform nationally. His movement grew through using violence in the streets, causing chaos, rising crime. Does this sound familiar? When he was creating the chaos, he was creating the otherization of the Jews, attacking each other. The communists, they staged battles in the streets to show the chaos, and eventually it took him a 10-year exercise, but eventually he was ensconced as a minority chancellor, and then within days we had of course the Reichstag fire, and he took over with the decree. So there's a path where just because we beat somebody in an election or defeat their coup doesn't mean they come back to power later. I started Beer Hall a year ago after I left Lincoln Project, and we originally were going to focus heavily on just that, right? The January 6th insurrection and holding them accountable. As we got into the election and looked at our options, my co-founder and I are like, okay, there's something else going on here. How do we as an organization continue the battle? So what we're actually doing right now is I'm working with kind of fun what I'm doing. It's kind of weird, right? So one of the things that frustrates me is this disinformation we deal with, right? And that's what happened in Germany is disinformation, the manipulation of the media. So we have a challenge here in America. We don't talk to each other very well anymore, right? I came to this realization that we don't talk to each other. And it turns out there's a ton of great academic research out there that talks about this. How do we bust through disinformation bubbles? It's been done for terrorism organizations. How do you talk to terrorists? How do you break them away from their cults? There's a whole history. There's a ton of academic research. The problem is a lot of this is buried inside like doctoral dissertations that none of us can fucking read. So I'm actually working with a professor at American University where we're developing a plan to come up with sort of a guide, like how can Americans talk to each other, right?
Wow.
How do we find a way to break through the disinformation? How do I talk to my former in-laws about what they're doing, what they're seeing, and they're misunderstanding the world. I believe we have a moment now. There is a little bit of a breaking. You can see the MAGA movements fighting each other. There's hope where people are breaking with the MAGA movement, and they're not necessarily embracing the DeSantis movement, because there was a belief that it would just go from Trump to DeSantis. I don't believe that DeSantis has the capability to do that. But having said that, there are cracks in the edifice that, if we're smart, we need to exploit. Look, the biggest mistakes we saw what's the biggest mistake you see in World Times? We win a battle, but don't exploit the victory, right? And I'm an old soldier. Okay. So just because we've beaten them on the battlefield doesn't mean we have to exploit. We let Lee retreat from Gettysburg and end up with 2 more years of war, right? I mean, if you look at the Civil War, we had a lot more Civil War than we needed to, because Union generals kept saying, well, we won, and then let the Confederate Army walk away. Why did they not survive in the end? I'll tell you where I'm sitting right now. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I'm about, I'm literally sitting right where the Union broke through, not far from here in Petersburg, and broke through. And what did Grant do? When he took Richmond, he kept going. He chased Lee across Virginia until he got to Appomattox Courthouse and finally defeated him. Okay. So what we're in now, I believe, you guys, is we may have won this battle, but if we don't pursue the enemy until he's extinguished, the war will continue. And so my goal is, on the Beer Hall project, we'll continue this pursuit of our enemies through breaking the hold they have on their millions of followers. Maybe we can start talking to each other and figuring out that we have common ground, that breaking the hold of this disinformation cycle, and then we pursue to the very end of the world all these MAGA candidates that have slipped through. There's a very good chance that they're going to take the House by a slim margin. We were talking about before we went on camera. And I got a little bit, I've been catching shit online because I put a video up on my podcast. I have a podcast now, by the way, guys. On Democracy FP Well. I got to plug my podcast. Finally got a studio. I'm doing it all official now. But I said on my podcast, I did a solo episode after the election, that, yeah, there's a very good chance they're going to take the House. There's a very good chance it's going to be a slim margin, possibly 3 or 4 votes. Jesus, can you imagine what that means? That means those crazies, those backbenchers that they've ignored for the last 2 years, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, all the nutters, and they've got by the way, they just hired a bunch more of these nutters. Don't be fooled. A bunch of the crazy MAGAs won. Eli Lake out, and Eli Crane out. I mean, I can name a lot of veterans, by the way, which is a whole other separate issue.
Right.
So those MAGA backbenchers now actually matter more than ever. They actually matter for whoever ends up being speaker. Probably not going to be Kevin McCarthy, but whoever ends up being speaker, he's going to have to kowtow to these MAGA chuds to get anything done. And it's going to be a shit show. And we're going to record it, and we're going to run against it. Just like AOC appears in every ad for a Republican candidate in the country, we're going to make sure that Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting on a committee, causing trouble, being disruptive, being anti-American, is shown to the world. So we have to pursue our enemy. I think that's the phase we're in. So yeah, we have a victory. The war is not over, right? The war against this MAGA movement, this anti-democratic, this authoritarian movement is done. The mistake we make is sitting back, patting yourselves on the back, saying that, well, we finally turned the corner. I mean, look, guys, I'm an Iraq veteran, right? And Afghanistan, war on terror. I mean, I didn't go to Afghanistan, but how many times we've turned the corner in Afghanistan? Yeah, that was the running joke among veterans in the global war on terror, that we turned the corner so many fucking times in Afghanistan. We're just doing circles. And the danger we have here in America, I believe, is we don't pursue our enemies till they're extinguished. Then we will continue this battle for a lot longer than we need to. There's history right here in the United States of America. I'm sitting in Richmond, Virginia, like I said. So there's a wonderful bridge here. If you're making it to Richmond, there's a bridge that goes across the river. They built it about 10 years ago, and it actually highlights the last days of the fall of Richmond. And I always stop, and they have like quotes on the bridge, like a medal on the bridge, and the fall of Richmond, how important it was. And it always reminds me of this moment. Now, it's funny we had this interview, because I walked it yesterday, and I was thinking, that's where we are. The war ended because Grant skipped Richmond and just kept going. He kept chasing Lee across Virginia. The war could have gone on for months more if he hadn't kept pursuing the Lee till he couldn't pursue any longer. That's what we have to do.
Well, what you just said, let me just say one thing, and then you go HiFi super quick. HiFi talks a lot about accountability. Everything you just said, by the way, is I'm just storing it in my heart for fortification right now. I'm serious. But when you talk about chasing these these characters, these anti-democratic actors, across the country, I don't think we can do it without the accountability. And what can you say about that? Because we have not seen accountability for January 6th at the levels that actually instigated it. And are we going to see it? And how important is that?
I think it's key, but I am cautiously optimistic. There's the military in me again, right? I'm cautiously optimistic because if GOJ has been waiting for this election, well, this election's over.
Yeah.
So the cautiously optimistic part of me is like, now can you stop dicking around? I know there's fear that, you know, look, there's a reason Trump's announcing tomorrow. Okay, he knows, he believes that DOJ was waiting for the midterm and to indict him or whatever they're going to do with him. So he can circumvent the whole thing by announcing a week after the fucking midterm before DOJ. Look, it's so transparent. It's pathetic. And anybody who's telling you otherwise is gaslighting the shit out of themselves and you, right? There's a reason Trump is announcing tomorrow, so he can try and get out of. Oh, it's political. I'm the number one political candidate. That's the whole purpose of this. Trump's entire life is to stay out of jail. Okay, that's it. Stay rich, stay out of jail. And he's found us. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Garland is not fooled by that bullshit, and he does what's right, and then we actually see some indictments. It got lost in the election, but there was some pretty good signs going on right before the election. If you do remember, there was real investigations. There were grand juries being called. Kash Patel's been right for the election. If you remember Kash Patel, that shithead.
Did you see the boot ad?
You guys are gonna be beat. Yeah. Oh my God, that was fake. But the fact that you retweeted it is amazing, right?
What the hell was that?
I'm so glad to know it was
but
fake.
The fact he's in a cooperation agreement, that's not good for Trump. So there are earnestly good signs that we're going. It's easy to forget because it's a whole 2 weeks ago in America is like ancient history, you know. But before all this midterm kind of shut things down, there was hopeful signs. So for some reason, I'm feeling optimistic, probably because I have a giant coffee. You know, I think there's a reason to believe that DOJ is going to do their goddamn job. Again, I do live in fear they'll be fooled by this bullshit him running for office, but I don't actually think. I think we're done with that bullshit. I think that Mr. Biden's probably empowered. You know, I think it's time.
I hope the bubble that they floated about a special counsel,
right,
like that goes away, because Jesus Christ, the last thing we need is Mueller 2.0.
I'm so fucking tired of all of it. I'm with you guys. I'm so goddamn tired of all of it. I'm tired of the dorking around. I'm tired. Look, I get the system's slow, and I've been a critic, and I've tried to control it. I get it. We have to do this right, especially when you're talking about indicting a former president. There's no and Congress members. You've got to do it right. I understand that. I do. But there just seems to be a lack of.
But you gotta do it.
Now, the good news is our democracy doesn't hang in the balance at the moment. I mean, we probably will lose the January 6th committee if they take the gavels. But the information's done. The information's been collected. There's more information coming. Our Department of Justice has done their part. There are grand juries being formed. God, maybe I could actually be optimistic and think we'll actually see some actual instigators go to jail. It's not like they hid their footprint, for God's sake. I mean, my God. I mean, it's like Margie Taylor Greene was nothing but shy. Yeah. Margie Taylor Greene was not shy about what she was saying. Okay, so
it's imperative.
1776.
Now, so the good news is, I'll last note on that, people are flipping. So let's go back to what we're seeing in the last week, right? What we are seeing is you saw Winsome Sears, you saw Jeff Duncan down in Georgia, you see the people pulling away from the MAGA Trump. Look, Trump's whole hold in this party is about keeping them in line. Like every good dictator or thug or gangster, he's got to keep everybody in line. When people start drifting away, that means they start talking to DOJ. Okay, when the people who know things, well, you know what, I think I will comply with that subpoena after all. And I think that's what you'll see. I think in the next week or two, you're going to start seeing, oh, you know what, Mark Meadows changed his mind. He's gonna actually comply with that subpoena after all, or whomever. It may not be Meadows because he's a shithead, but you're gonna see these people who've been resisting suddenly said, you know what, I don't really have the money to fight this anymore. I'll go ahead and give you my phone records or whatever they may be resisting. So I think there's some minor cause for optimism. I think it's weird to have that word come out of my mouth, but here we are.
Okay, here's my question.
Go ahead, HiFi.
You and I, military stuff, love it.
Yep.
Here's the thing. January 6th was a coup, and a coup requires some sort of army, right? Some sort of force.
Yep.
To have a force, you must pay the force, pay for the force to move, pay to feed the force, pay to house the force. I don't think the January 6th committee went quite far enough.
Correct.
Because there is a lot of questions that are not answered with regards to that force. Like they're stopping at Stewart Roads. Where's the next level?
Right. Agree. And who organized, right? Somebody who financed it. That's the big question. I want to know the financing behind it. We also know that there has to be a finance behind these things. We do know that Ali Alexander's out there floating still. He's got himself a damn show on Call-In now with David Sachs as the law operation. So I mean, so the instigators of people, the Moms for Liberty people, or whatever they call themselves, who organized that thing.
Can I say one name?
Sure.
Michael T. Flynn.
Yeah, that's their one, right? So
I mean,
Flynn's out there, and he's still building his army. He's still out there recruiting. Does this election change that, or does it instigate it? I mean, there's, like you said, and Jim, it's a great point. And does this accelerate his Christian nationalist movement? We've ignored the Christian nationalism bullshit for a couple of weeks now. That's going to come roaring back. These guys are going around the country, right? So we do have.
Well, he's mixed it with QAnon, right? It's, I mean, it's just
this white black robe. I mean, I can't remember I mean, there's so many levels to it, but this extreme militant Christian nationalism movement. That's really what's getting. So QAnon's morphing in this extreme Christian nationalism.
That's right.
Yeah. There's some really smart people. You guys are in it. There's some really smart people analyzing that. It's a little bit above my my expertise level, of course, but watching that, it does give me fright because I served in Baghdad.
Yes.
I dealt with the Mahdi army. I got bounced out of bed a few times from rockets making their way over from Sadr City. Those are the kind of wingnuts that will do those kind of things.
He's building American ISIS, right? I mean, that's
100%. That's what I believe too. Yeah,
and
that has to be stopped too. So the question: does our DOJ have the courage? I mean, are they empowered enough? I mean, again, the good news is, where we are with this election, is that going to be enough of a empowerment for DOJ to get back to work and be unleashed? We'll see. Of course, the danger with the House of Representatives is that they'll be able to do all their little investigations and cause all kinds of problems. But I mean, I know we talk about not having hopium, but I do have a little bit right now. I just saw my grandkids, so I'm a little bit hopped up on, got some baby, hugging.
That's why we do it
about the world. Yeah, but I do believe it again, and I have to. And I do I do want to make that I do want to make that clear. Look, it's okay to feel good. We've got a moment here. I'm never one of those naysayers, or I mean, we've won a battle. I've been to war several times, right? I've won wars, or sort of draws, if you will, and it's good to feel good about it. We won this battle. But the war's not over yet. But we can pat ourselves on the back. Just like Zelensky, I think I saw it just this morning. President Zelensky marched away into Kherson. They raised the flag in Kherson. They're not done yet, but the momentum is going our way. We have some wind at our backs. The question is, will we pursue the wind at the back? Will we pursue our enemies to their destruction? And that's where that's where you'll see my voice a lot as we come in these next few weeks, guys. You'll hear me saying, okay, great. We kind of semi won that one. How do we make sure we win the next one? Right. And that means things like I'm very interested in talking to the folks who there's some really interesting groups like Blue Ohio, which are doing some really interesting approaches where they're funding Democratic candidates everywhere. If you guys know my personal work, I also work with Voters of Tomorrow, getting our Gen Z friends out. I'm also working with Crystal Quaid, who's the minority leader in Missouri. Crystal's got her organization doing some great stuff with the House Democratic Campaign Committee, where they're funding candidates in almost every race. She's trying to recruit people. She tells them, look, you're going to lose, but if you can move this from 20 to 30, I'll give you X amount of money to help you do it. That's what we need. Research shows that when we have competitive races, more people vote. That means the uptick gets more votes. Look, the reason Warnock's in it, one of the reasons, and people have been beating the hell out of me about Marcus Flowers' campaign, how much money we made. But I got to tell you, one of the reasons that Reverend Warnock's in a runoff is because the turnout operation we ran in Northwest Georgia. It's just not even debatable. We turned out more voters than, did we turn out enough? No, but we turned out like 15,000 or so voters from the last time. Well, those voters definitely voted for Reverend Warnock, and he's in a runoff now. It's important. If you know Virginia, McAuliffe didn't lose. Everyone wants to say it was the CRT in Northern Virginia. Yeah, that was part of it. But the real numbers are out in rural Virginia and Gen Z, where McAuliffe ran no Gen Z outreach. McAuliffe ran no rural outreach. He was just thinking he could win in Northern Virginia and Virginia Beach, and he'd win. And where he should have had 30 points out in rural Virginia, he had 20. When you add 20 points in counties all across the western swath of Virginia, guess what? You lose a statewide race. Glenn Youngkin. So I do believe that you'll see a lot more. My work will focus a lot on that, making sure we've got people running everywhere. The Dems have to start focusing on the minor leagues. Boards of education, county commissions, state delegates. If we don't build the bench, we'll never take this country back. And that's what the Republicans have been doing for 20 years.
I mean, you gotta. I hate to hand it to Mike Flynn, but you
definitely don't have to hand it to Mike Flynn.
But his whole thing has been local action has a national impact.
Correct.
Meaning,
Correct.
which
100%.
is
That's what he's doing.
him building his MAGA movement from the ground up.
He's partnered with he's partnered with Moms for Liberty. You know, we're seeing that all over the country. Where I live in Missouri, two of those nut jobs ran for school board. They snuck in, and their first act was to get rid of all the diversity programs that supported students of color. Because, and this is my favorite part, we don't need these programs because they only serve some students, not all students. And yeah,
all lives matter, right? So one thing that I repeat very often that I think maybe summarizes a little bit this is that fascism does not stop on its own. Fascism must be defeated. Yep. To your point, we have got to chase these motherfuckers to the end of the earth and make sure that they don't hunker down, you know, burrow in and do it all over again.
That's right.
Yep.
So
and you'll see me. I'm glad we had this conversation because it got me thinking. I had baby brain all weekend, so I wasn't thinking about it. You know, but that's it. I mean, you know, again, sitting here in Richmond, Virginia, what more of an example do you need? The Civil War ended here. It didn't end when we took Richmond, though. It ended up at Appomattox Courthouse,
right?
Which is about 90 miles away. Why did it end there? Because Grant blew right through Richmond and kept going.
Right. Wow. I have two quick things, and they might run together before we let you go.
Cool.
The guys know that I've been a campaign manager in local politics here in Los Angeles. And on election night, 400 people showed up for the party, and it's a nonpartisan race. And so they were from every single, you know, political end of the spectrum, but they all came together for my candidate. And I noticed in the year that I've been working with these people and with these volunteers, and how hard they worked, that there was a softening. We know that Russian propaganda has tried to push people to the extremes in conjunction with the American oligarchs who are funding that. And to remove the center where we all came together for community was the point, to make us war against each other. And I saw in this year, people started in their extremes, and then they came together over a really incredible candidate, but also because of the way we all work together. And this is an investigative show about disinformation. At our core, that's what we're about. And you've talked about it. How in a few words in the research you've been doing, can we tell people to talk to each other? What are the best tools that you have? I know for me, it's simply listening. The guys and I have done a lot of work on this with Dr. Stephen Hassan. More listening than talking is one way to do it. But we have this beautiful moment right now, I think, and this is a moment we need to seize as a country to bring people back together and to remove the extremes as much as possible.
Yep. No. Well, I think, and that's going to be the whole point with this project I'm doing with Beer Hall. So I don't even know yet, but I do know this. We have to find ways to just talk to each other, right? I mean, I see it in my own neighborhood. And look, this isn't just the disinformation; it's also a pandemic. I mean, if you look at what we've been through the last 4 years, we've got a point where we just don't meet. We don't meet in the street anymore to have a cup of coffee and catch up, right? We have to find our common ground, our humanity that binds us together as Americans first, right? And I think we've lost a lot of that. And that's not, I guess, it's not just our politics; it's also our pandemic life. It's hiding in our own holes. How do we bring Americans together and talk about beer? How do how do we talk?
Yeah.
So believe it or not, Beer Hall Project, you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh. I'm giving you guys I'm actually changing Beer Hall Project. Right now, if you look at the Beer Hall Project, the logo is actually like Josh Hawley's fist. I'm actually changing it to a beer.
Excellent.
And literally, because if we can start meeting in the beer halls, and I love that. One of my favorite things to do before the pandemic was I would go to one of these beer halls, some wonderful ones. St. Louis is a beer town, and you sit in these giant, how good beer halls, these giant tables. And you sit down, and weirdly somebody else sits across from you. You've never met them, and you're having a beer. You start talking about IPA or how much you hate it, like I do. I hate IPA, but
you do too much hop.
I just hate it. It's like a bitter sucking on leaves. But we talk about that, and we laugh about that, and we've got a common ground because we're talking about something that isn't about politics. It's what binds us together, our common hatred for IPAs, for example. So I think what we do is when we start having those conversations, we start having beer hall conversations that don't involve overthrow our government. Maybe we're going to start seeing each other as humans again, our common bond. I mean, we do have what I found yesterday. If you've got Joe Trippi, who is just a wonderful guy, and I've been very blessed to get to know him through the Lincoln Project, and well, actually before that. But Trippy had a great thread yesterday talking about focus groups, and we saw this in our Georgia race. Everybody kept saying, "Well, it's the economy. The economy is the number one issue," and too many pundits of, "Well, the economy is the number one issue, so they're going to vote against Biden." What they discovered in focus groups was they say, "Well, the economy is stuck up, but that was that pandemic, or it's international shipping, or it's not enough immigrants." I know we can't hire. People who own businesses know it's not that Gen Zers are lazy. We don't have enough fucking people. Okay. And you know why? One of the reasons we don't have enough fucking people is because the last asshole blocked immigration for 5 years. So even legal immigrants can't get here.
Right.
So when you do focus groups, this is what Trippy was saying. If you look at his thread yesterday, when we unpacked in economy, what we discovered was average Americans aren't stupid. They know it wasn't Biden did this. No, they know that there's 10% inflation in England. There's 13% inflation in EU. There's 25% inflation in Turkey. They're not stupid, okay? And so I think we've got to stop treating fellow Americans like they're stupid and it's just generic. That's what made me so angry. And that goes the opposite way. When you saw that stuff, well, we're worried about our democracy. Well, half the people who are worried about our democracy are worried that, they have it. They want to get rid of it, So again, we have to break through those barriers. And again, I do circle back to what, segue back to what we said at the beginning, right? Which is sort of a callback, if you will, which is the media has a role to play in this as well. And I hold them very accountable. I love the media. I'm a PR guy. I started doing media stuff for David Petraeus in 2004, for God's sake. I've been with the media my whole, and I want to hold them accountable. They must ask themselves hard questions about how they've failed us to keep us informed and to digest information for us and present it to in a manner that makes sense. Instead, what we saw was people I trust and like, and I won't name all the names, on TV saying, well, it's the economy. It's the economy. It's like, okay, it's not the fucking economy, okay? Yeah, the economy sucks.
Turned out it was
but
also
people are worried about their rights. They're worried about their abortion.
Well,
and then
people were worried about women's health rights. Well,
right.
So
and Gen Z, which is worried about other people's rights. I mean, one of the fascinating things, you look at my podcast, I did with a guy named John Del Volpe. John Del Volpe is the head he's the head of polling at the Harvard Institute of Politics, and he also runs a company. He is the expert in Gen Z and then millennials before that. He's been doing this for 22 years, polling them twice a year. And Del Volpe was on my show 2 weeks ago, right before my last show before the election. And one of the things we talked about is how unique Gen Z is. When Gen Z goes into the voting booth, they actually are thinking about, when he asked them, what do you think about? He goes, well, I'm thinking about my friend who's gay and got beat up at school.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my friend who's transgender and the school board voted against them. They can't just use the bathroom of their choice anymore. They have to, and so this generation is rising, is much more aware of their privilege, much more aware of their fellow man and the diversity of their culture. And for this year's election, we're already showing that those who are 30 and under, their votes directly countermanded the votes of those 65 and older. So we're at a point where this new generation, I'm hopeful, my last piece of optimism is this new generation of Gen Zers and young millennials that rises up is a much more differently aware of their surroundings and their fellow man and the rights of those people. So when people say they're worried about their rights, they're not just worried about their own, they're worried about people who we should care about. I'll give you one last story is my son, my girlfriend's son is a great kid. He goes to school in that Rockwood school district where these ridiculous women got elected to the school board, and they've already gotten rid of this program for their black students. So in Missouri, we have this case where black students from St. Louis City can come out to the school districts in the city, in the county, diversity, which you need. And these kids have a hard time, man. They're coming from the inner city to come out to this country school, and I can't tell how many times that her son has come home just furious. I'm like, what are you so angry? He goes, man, this guy was treating one of those kids like shit. Or no, it was during that TikTok challenge bullshit last year where they were messing up remember they're messing up bathrooms? And someone accused one of the inner city kids, was obviously the instigator of it. We had nothing to do with it. It was actually some country kid. And Cooper, this young man, came home just absolutely apoplectic that this kid was being unfairly accused of something he had nothing to do with. And it really struck me as I hear these polls where we talk to these kids that generation, they're very much aware of their place in society and those who aren't in their place. And I think that is really encouraging to me because unfortunately our friends in the boomer generation and us fellow Gen Xers may not be as aware as they are. So I leave with a note of optimism in the sense that this new generation is different. If we give them time and we support them and we do the things that we want, we understand what drives their feelings and need. I think we've got some hope for the next couple of years. And then meanwhile, those of us who are a little bit more aggressive are going to pursue our enemies to their death. My death.
Yeah.
Well, the death of their political careers. How's that?
I have one more thing I need from you. It's very, very important to me. It's important to the team. And you're the only one who can speak on this, I think, that we've interviewed. We learned that radicalization within the military happens on the way in and happens on the way out. When people are actually in the military and they're around all this diversity, that they're actually relatively protected. So we know we have a radicalization problem within our military. With your incredible experience and your, just your background, if you could speak to people in the military who are radicalized or on the brink of radicalization, can you offer them some words that might help them come back to who they really are?
Well, it's unfortunate you see that. You do see there's two factors in play here, I believe. One is I used to tell people all the time, look, I get a kid in the military, he's 18. That means his parents have had 18 years to fuck him up. Okay, sorry, or raise him right? Let's, I hate, I mean, my 8 weeks, 12 weeks of basic training is not going to make a bad person a good person. I will teach him discipline. I'll teach him how to work as a team member. I'll teach him, how to that. By the way, there's a punishment for not being a good guy, but I cannot change a shithead to a good guy. So there's two factors to this. One factor is identify the shitheads and get rid of them. Okay, and that's where the military unfortunately is failing us. That's why Doug Mastriano made colonel. That's why Michael Flynn made 3-star general. The military has a really big problem right now. They're not looking at themselves at all and saying, you know what? I think we're promoting assholes. And so until the military radically changes how they approach fishing out and identifying these radical conservative, look, Doug Mastriano did not become a Christian nationalist asshole all of a sudden. Okay, there's rumors at the War College that he got his class taken away from him because he was saying this kind of radical Christian white stuff in international classes he was teaching. Doug Mastriano was known to be the extremist that we saw run for Pennsylvania governor, and the military did nothing. So one, the military's got to do a damn better job and have some self-awareness to start looking at why Michael Flynn exists. Part two, those of you who are being led astray, look left and right. It is, the problem is I think we get away in the military always saying, well, I don't see race, I just see black and white, I just see green. That was always the thing I was taught when I was in the 80s as a young officer. Well, we just see green. And it only took me about 5 years ago to realize what bullshit that was. Because the thing is, look at me. I'm a white guy from St. Louis, Missouri, who grew up in I'm not shitting you, I grew up in a golf course subdivision, okay? I worked at a country club, okay? I have the luxury of only seeing green. But my soldier, young Specialist Brown, who worked for me in Korea, my very first assignment was from the inner city of Chicago. He didn't have that luxury, right? He did not have the luxury of having the ability to look past color because his color was being told, shown to him. And so we do have to be aware better of what others' experiences are. And the military, that's why with all these people talk about the woke military and the diversity training, I'm sorry, I'm all for it, because we need to understand the different experiences that go into the American experience.
Yeah.
You see it today. Today, I was in an argument with Scott Walker. I was yelling at him. He doesn't argue back. But about voting should just be one day. Yeah. It's not that hard. People should, you know what it is. You should take work off and go. Well, in Liberty County, Georgia, they closed 6 of 7 polling places.
Right.
People from a town that was mostly black had to travel 45 miles with no public transportation to vote. Well, if you vote for just one day, guess what? You just disenfranchise millions of people. Yeah. Well, that's good. But if I'm a white guy living in the burbs here and my polling place is down the street in the fire station, it's easy for me. Wow. Again, we've got to make sure we're telling our fellow Americans that their experience isn't the only one. Right. So I do have hope. But I guess I'm just, again, I'm an old officer. I want to hold the military accountable for their failures to identify the radicalization of these troops and then punish them for it. We have a nasty habit of just letting it go. That's where Mastriano got away with. Mastriano was a bad fucking guy. Okay, his ridiculous. He got a master's degree for just trash. Okay, Seb Gorka used to teach at the Marine Corps War College. I mean, for fuck's sake, people, are you kidding me with this shit? I mean, are you fucking kidding me with this shit? I mean, the military is so oblivious.
He has a 2010 paper that I dug up that Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn incorporated into his whole thing. It's just all about anti-American psyops. It was amazing.
Right. And now we've got these fucking guys running around. Mike Flynn. Hey, look, Stan McChrystal. Everybody loves Stan McChrystal. look, Mike Flynn exists because of Stan McChrystal. Stan
Yeah.
McChrystal's sitting there at Davos. Stan McChrystal's at Davos. He's making millions of dollars as a consultant, and nobody's ever said, "Hey Stan, what the fuck, dude?"
Yeah.
Because I've got pretty good sources telling me they're still hanging out.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
McMaster,
Flynn started his consultancy group that stole the election in McChrystal's kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Bingo.
Now, there's been no accountability for that. So again, change also begins with accountability. We talked about earlier that what it's like Rick Wilson's always saying, an attempted coup without punishment is just practice. And the same thing, instilling military discipline and ensuring we have a diverse military that recognizes America comes with discipline. When I was in Iraq, traveling the country with General Petraeus and General Dempsey, when we traveled and visited Iraqi training units, because we were training Iraqi security forces, if we stumbled out, a lot of times we go to a unit and maybe they're made of mostly Shia, and the Shia have a nasty habit, terrible thing. I mean, they have a habit where they will place icons of their saints, if you will, on their vehicles. So we would go and our Iraqi army vehicle would have a Shia prophet, sticker on it, stuff like that. And we were ruthless in peeling those off and ruthless in disciplining units that allowed that to occur. The last thing we wanted was the Iraqi people to think that their own army, their national army, was a religious militia against them because of their religion. The United States military has got to take that kind of steps now, and they don't want to admit it. They have to take those kind of steps to stamp out the right-wing Christian nationalism, the racism, and when they find and identify it, they have to crush it. And to this day, I don't believe they're taking it that seriously. I don't care what they say. I love these guys. I know General McConville. They are oblivious to the political environment they sit in, and it's going to cost us if they don't get their shit together soon.
That's everything we needed from you, Fred. Thank you so much.
I need one more thing.
Go for it.
Of course.
All right. So I was feeling like we're in a reality show and the country has to vote on if they want like season 2 of the January 6th saga, right? So we ended with Trump got subpoenaed. That's our cliffhanger. Now we're in season 2. I'm hoping for a Senate investigation, maybe. Let's really get
now we
into
held
this.
the Senate, right? Yeah, I agree. I think there's some hope that the January 6th stuff can go. There was discussion. I've seen it in the reaches of the internet where the January 6th stuff goes to the Senate. I mean, I don't see why not, right? I mean, what's holding them back? I am hopeful that like subpoenas of Trump have meaning. That DOJ steps up at this point. I do think season 2. I guess season 2 of these investigations will be. I am. In the end, after having hung out with my grandbabies for a weekend, I am cautiously optimistic that change is coming. But people like me and you guys are going to have to be the people that everybody hates, standing behind them saying, "We're not done yet."
That's right.
Like my tattoo, right? I'm not done yet, right? We're not done yet. We've got to pursue these guys to the bitter end. That the war is not over. We may have won the battle, but if we allow them to regroup, if we allow them to get reorganized, we'll be fighting this war for years and years. We had them on the ropes, the Taliban on the ropes, and we let them regroup. We had IS, we had Al Qaeda on the ropes, we let them regroup. Americans have a horrible habit of taking our eyes off the ball.
That's right.
And so, I fully expect my next 2 years will be people telling me I'm full of shit again and telling me I'm overthinking things or telling me I cuss too much. But I'm sorry, I care too much about this country to give a shit about what you think about how I use my language.
I've heard that one.
Here's the phrase, Fred. Killer instinct.
Yeah.
Right.
It's time that we really.
Yeah.
I tell a story a lot, and I'll let you get. There's a story I get a lot from. I catch a lot of shit from being a Lincoln Project guy, and then of course I catch shit for being on Marcus's campaign where we did so well with the small dollar donors, and 700,000 people gave Marcus an average of $21. People ask me all the time, like, how did Marcus make all that money? Well, small donors gave it to us. I laughed. I was getting beat up on Twitter just yesterday. Somebody was like, well, he should have given that money to other candidates. Okay, that's not how. One, it's not legal. Two, you're fucking high. I'm not. Grandma in Washington State gave Marcus Flowers $25.
Yeah.
She's not giving it to fucking, some obscure race in Nevada. She wants Marjorie Taylor Greene to have an opponent. But back to the topic at hand is if you guys watch Ted Lasso, has everybody watched Ted Lasso? I hope you do. But one of the things we used to talk about, I talked about when I was Lincoln Project Executive Director and still do today in my private work is every team needs that one guy, Jamie Tart, who's not afraid to get in the face of the other opponents, draw the yellow card, and cause trouble. That's why, if you remember season 2, the story arc of Jamie Tars, it got nice, right? And Roy Kent said, look, you made him a team player, you fucked him up. And and so I'm on the I believe that, like, my former friends at the Lincoln Project and the work we used to do there, nerd topic. But what you look, our team needs people aren't afraid to tussle. Look, everybody else could go hug it out. Great, you guys go hug. You need somebody who's going to be willing to get in the face of our opponent, draw the red card, and keep them off their off balance. And that's where we are right now.
That's right.
Look, people beat up Grant. People beat up, like, Sherman's still cursed here in the South, right? I mean, Sherman's marched to sea, but you know what Sherman did? He ended a fucking war.
Yeah.
And
right.
I'll live in history as the guy who won a war versus the guy who hugged it out with my enemies. And
Yeah.
so I think there's just got to be a lot of us who are willing to say, yeah, you guys go do your thing, and I won't get invited to the White House Veterans Day breakfast ever again. But you know what? I'm going to sleep in peace when my kids have democracy.
That's right. That's why we do this. That's why we do it.
Right.
I want to give the last word to, mine says the future is unwritten. And I think that what you said is we won the battle, but it's time to go after and chase them down till we win the war. Correct. So we're going to write a better future.
I believe we're in the pursuit phase, right? We have to pursue.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we win this battle, but now we have to pursue our opponents until they surrender the battlefield.
Oh my God, it's so great. Fred, thank you so very much for taking this time with us this morning. It's everything to me. Thank you.
Well, I'm humbled. I appreciate that, guys. It's nice to have supporters. I appreciate work. You guys are doing great work. It's important. So if you guys catch me on Democracy with FP Wellman on every podcast platform and on YouTube now, like you guys, I need all the help I can get.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
For sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Right on. What a way to start.
Nothing else to say, man. Chase them motherfuckers down.
We're going to chase them down. Oh, man.
I would just like to remind everyone that every time I went on the field, I got a red card.
I got a few too, bro. We'll compare red card collections.
Oh my goodness.
Indeed.
Oh my God. All right. Let's get this on air because it's important. Let's get this to the people. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you guys.
Love you guys.
What's up?